We're on.
Yep.
Hi, friends. I have in my life a wee bit of experience, including serving this country's armed forces and fighting wildland fires and adventures like that, and teaching school for over 20 years, teaching public school, high school, and elementary school. So I have a bit of experience. I have children, which I'm very proud of, and they help me out a lot now, especially as I'm getting in my more advanced age. But my concern right now is what's going on in this country. And as a social studies teacher, I imparted to my students a need to trust our form of government, the federal government and the state governments, the federal government being a three-headed institution, the legislative, the executive, and the judicial, which has really served us well, even though we were interrupted with a really serious and deadly and horrible civil war in the 1860s. But through it all, we've managed to survive as a nation, but we seem to be forgetting some important things. And I thought a little bit of a review over some of the more important amendments might be in order for you, the American people, who deserve the truth about what's going on. And what's going on is very serious, because we've got a gang in Washington now that seems bent on tearing our republic apart. And you can't get any more serious than that. They're ignoring the Constitution. We have a felon for a president, a convicted criminal is president of our country. So what does that tell you, or what does it tell us as the American people? 75 million people voted for Donald Trump, and 75 million didn't. And so it's kind of a puzzling situation, because these 75 million people that voted for Donald knew perfectly well that he had been convicted of 34 felony counts by a jury of his peers, not by arbitrary decisions by the government, by our legal system, by a jury of our peers, people like you and me. So what the motivations to those 75 million were, I'll never know. I have some ideas. It has to do with disinformation, has to do with religion, has to do with all kinds of things. A deep mistrust of government, although can you imagine what your life would be like without government services? I mean, even basic stuff like inspecting our meat supply to make sure we're not being poisoned, or our food supply. Or, I mean, some of you, irrationally enough, are against vaccinations of any kind, vaccines. And that is just not an informed decision. But that's an individual thing, I guess, except for when it's when you're talking about sending your children to school and putting other children at risk. That's a line that can't be crossed. So that's a subject for one of our future talks that we'll get to. But when we're talking about the amendments of our Constitution, which keep us the free people that we are and have been for over 200 years, and it's not anything to be trifled with, but it is being trifled with by the people at the top, Donald Trump and his minions and his sycophants. And for those of you who don't know what a sycophant is, that somebody is a yes man. And that's what Trump wants. He wants loyalty. He wants yes to his increasingly disturbing behavior. I mean, he's 88 years old, so he seems to be exhibiting signs of dementia. And for the leader of the free world, not a good idea. And Elon Musk, I'm hearing him on the news. Elon Musk, an unelected virtual reality president, and that is something that should never be allowed, but it's going on. He's making decisions for people's livelihoods, for families' livelihoods. It's just not right. And it's something that you, the American people, need to consider carefully. What kind of government do you want? I mean, we want one free of fraud and thievery and graft. Yeah, that's just common sense. But they've turned it into a political issue, and it's like they're waving the bloody flag of the old political days where politicians would scare the people, waving this bloody flag, scare the peebies out of them. And that's what's going on now. Trump and his minions are scaring you. They're after Social Security, Medicare, Social Security. I mean, come on. First Amendment, which is kicked around by the politicians and by a lot of people misunderstood. The First Amendment gives you the right to religion, but it doesn't give us the right to establish a religion for everybody. That's prohibited in the Constitution. But it is not anywhere in the Constitution where it prohibits religion. You can have whatever religion you want, depending on how you feel about that. But the First Amendment guarantees free speech, which is very important. Unless you get to the point where you're afraid to speak, then we're in really, really serious trouble. And we also need a free press, one that's unrestricted, unrestrained, uninfluenced by politicians. We need a free press. How are we going to get the truth otherwise? Although some of the media outlets use misinformation and mask it as news. There's one in particular, I know you know what I'm talking about, Fox News. This is strictly a propaganda arm of the Republican Party. You say, oh, well, MSNBC and CBS and all those others. Well, I don't agree. They are at least reporting what's going on. Sometimes they get opinionated. That's free speech. But it needs to be restrained and tempered and used wisely. And the press doesn't always do that. And they need to improve there. But free speech and free press critical. You can have your religion, but you can't establish one for the country. Tell somebody else what to believe. That's way big no-no. Second Amendment. Now, this is a sticking point for a lot of you people. But the Second Amendment was written in 1787, right after a Revolutionary War fought with weapons that we consider today to be very primitive. Muzzle-loading cannons, muzzle-loading rifles and pistols, swords, even arrows. They didn't have the long rifles they have today, the AR-15s capable, well, they're military weapons is what they are. They're not hunting weapons. Besides that, if you hit an animal with the AR-15, you blow it to pieces. That's not hunting, it's just animal murder. Second Amendment was written to be sure that there was an armed guard to protect the populace. But after the United States was formed in 1789, when it was ratified by 3/4 of the states and became the law of the land, the Second Amendment became controversial almost immediately, but in the Constitution it lays it out pretty plainly. And it's not just the 16 words in the Second Amendment, it's also written into the Constitution that the states are going to control the militia, and that makes sense. Today we have a standing Army, Air Force, Marine Corps, Navy, everything. We have an established police force, sheriffs, to keep order and peace. So from 1887 till now, we don't need a militia. The militia is built into the state in the National Guard. Okay, if you want to be a militiaman, join the Guard. That's what it's for. But not everybody, because they have a weapon, is the militia. That's not the way it works. I mean, it's obvious now. There's more guns in this country than there are people. People are murdered every day using these weapons of war, which never should be allowed. Gun manufacturers, they need to be reined in, rechanneled, and if people are going to legitimately hunt, then those are the kind of weapons they need to hunt with. Not military weapons that can slaughter 26 children in a matter of seconds. Come on. Second Amendment needs to be rewritten. It needs to reflect the 21st century, not the 18th century. That's too big a stretch. Technology has brought us too far. And the weapons they're producing now are too deadly. And they should not be in the hands of children, to young adults, immature adults, to disturbed adults. They should not be allowed to possess those kind of weapons. It's not reasonable. Second Amendment needs to be rewritten, not gotten rid of, but it needs to be written so it's specific that a national state guard needs to be established, and it already is. It's called the National Guard, and they get called up to go into combat. So you would, tough, rough men out there who want to get into the stuff, join the National Guard. You might get your chance. Now we go down to the Fourth Amendment, and we're dealing with privacy. And privacy is something that we need to be really suspicious of, because it's under attack, because the Constitution's under attack. So things like the Fourth Amendment, they guarantee us against unreasonable searches and seizures. You have to go through a process. And they have to have probable cause, or they cannot proceed. And they have to be specific if they give you a warrant. Those are things that we work out at the state level. Fifth Amendment, you can't put anybody to death without a grand jury indictment, or you can't give them an unreasonable sentence without one. And then it's up to the judge and jury. No double jeopardy. No. Can't be tried twice for the same thing. Have to have due process, and it has to be followed. And that goes into the Sixth Amendment, which is your guarantee of a speedy trial. If you're accused of a crime, if you're incarcerated, whatever, you have the right to a speedy trial. Without excessive bail or cruel or unusual punishment. Can't have that. These are, basic stuff that most people know, but we just don't think about it enough. And we're leaving ourselves open to the shenanigans that Trump and his sycophants, including J.D. Vance, oh my goodness gracious, and Elon Musk, where in the world did he come from, and why is he here? He's not even elected. He's simply a billionaire spoiled brat. He's trying to screw our country up. If we're going to be serious about keeping this republic, we got to elect people who are going to really represent us. Who do we have here? Doug LaMoffa. Give me a break. LaMoffa, who makes millions of dollars by not growing something, calls himself a farmer. What a laugh. We can do better than LaMoffa. We have to do better than him. I don't care if it's a Republican or a Democrat or an independent. It's just somebody who's actually interested in the interest of the people of District 1, which includes Chico. We needed somebody that really represents us, not this parasite. So that's on us the people. We've got to elect competent people, not these job seekers, and that's not what a politician's supposed to be. He's supposed to be there to represent the people, us. And there is a serious movement from Trump down. Change our form of government. And it's worked pretty well through world wars, through civil wars, through economic times, through disease, and all kinds of problems, but we have always overcome them. Because we're Americans. We love this country. We better watch out. Because there are people who don't love this country and they don't love us. So, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Christians, Jews, Muslims, whatever. We're all people together. We better not forget it. We're gonna regret it. And a lot of us already are. Because since January 20th, it's been nothing but chaos in this country. Not to mention the ridiculous price of eggs. Well, friends, I'll bring you more. There's a lot of things to talk about. The culture, things that are going on in the culture, and political stuff. And there's issues that we need to deal with even here in Chico. So, anyway, we'll see you then.